to the podcast. I had a great conversation with Danson, and we talked about how important rock bottom is, paying attention to details. What is anxiety? Using comparison in a healthy way, and how your perception really skews the world. The world's as you are, and the quality of the questions you ask. Ask encouraging and empowering questions. So, if you're new to the podcast, I do 3 styles of episodes. Today's episode is a conversation with someone who was interesting to me, a like-minded individual who I thought could provide value, and he did. I learned a lot from him. So, another style is you guys could send questions into askjustin@myyahoo.com, and I'll answer those questions. As long as they're good, they'll be addressed through podcast episodes and even threads on Twitter. And I also do solo rants where I'm simply expressing reminders that I need to hear, hoping that what I need to hear is also beneficial to you. And if you want to help me out, if these podcast episodes have been of any value to you, the best way to simply help me out quickly is hit that star button on Spotify. It takes literally 3 seconds or less. And you could write a review on Apple Podcasts, but either way, just help me out with that, because I want to get the reach going to spread the message. It's a powerful message, and I know people need to hear it. So if this is beneficial to you, consider that. Thank you so much. Enjoy the conversation. Some people, me, from the outside, you perceive a happiness or fulfillment as something grandiose, something that's so far away. But once we start doing those smaller actions, regulating our consumption, training our body intensely, consistently, paying attention to the food we put in our system, and writing and reading and meditating. Those are these everyday free activities that completely change your state of being. So last year you were depressed. What was the initial spark to make a change? What really pushed you to say, I don't want to continue to live this way?
Well, so 2 years ago, I started being a stay-at-home dad, and I was like, yeah, I'm so excited for this. And I was trading stock options and just basically pissing away money. It was awful. So I was doing that, stay-at-home dad, and I was super distracted, couldn't ever get locked on focus. And I believe I had already lost some weight, but I was 260 pounds a little bit ago, like 2.5 years ago or so, and I'm 200. So I lost like 60 pounds worth of weight in like a year. So I became a stay-at-home dad. I was starting to get anxious, like bad. And I went to the doctor and they diagnosed me with generalized anxiety disorder, which was basically saying I get anxious about everything. And I'm like, okay, how did you find that out in 20 minutes on a phone call? So I started taking meds, started doing therapy. It didn't really help. So come my 30th birthday, I'm having so many troubles, like with my wife, with my kids. I didn't have a job. Like I had no purpose basically. And I was so mad or so like down on myself and not feeling good enough. I was just like, why? I should just end it so nobody has to deal with me. Now I yelled this at my 1-year-old, okay, because I was like fetching him drinks. I was doing all this stuff and he was still complaining about that not being good enough. And I was like, why don't I just kill myself so you don't have to deal with me? Well, at the time we had my mother-in-law living with us. So she was like, hey, why don't you just go for a walk? And like, I was super livid. And so it was that was like my rock bottom, basically, is realizing that I felt so bad that I didn't want to be alive. And that was the second time in my life I'd ever felt so depressed that I was like suicidal. Like I wasn't actively trying to kill myself, but I felt like, man, I don't even want to be alive. And So I finally started to peel into a book called How to Stop Anxiety and End Panic Attacks. And it's this free Kindle book. And it basically just teaches you how to self-talk your mindset into being okay whenever you're feeling anxious. There were some other techniques, but it's been a long time since I read that book. And it was like, just in your mind, just be saying, whatever happens, it will be okay. Like if you died, that's the extreme. Like if you passed out and somebody had to call someone or whatever happens, it will be okay. So you're just training your mind to stop being so anxious in a moment where it's like, you're fine, you're not in trouble. And so the more self-help books I started reading into, it just started transforming, my knowledge, my conception of life. So the moment was rock bottom, and the fix was just learning how to purport myself in life. Like after I read 12 Rules for Life, no, I'm sorry, is it 12 Rules for Life?
From Jordan Peterson. Yeah.
Yeah, that book, like so all those rules were just like, man, I I didn't used to be honest with people. I didn't used to be honest with myself.
Mm-hmm.
Telling people that I'm not actually fine with what they're doing and instead saying I've got a problem with this is just been a big change because I'm like very agreeable, especially for a man, like 88.
Mm-hmm.
And so for a long time, it was always somebody would do something. My moral compass would be like, I don't like that. We need to do something different. But instead, I'd be like, it's fine. I can't change their mind anyways.
Mm. Yeah, that ability to say no and stand up for yourself, that was a piece of my thread this morning. We have to be able to just have debates with people. It's not as if our aim has to be to change the way that they think, but we just cannot. Did I lose you?
Nope. I
Okay.
got you.
We can't allow ourselves to be stepped on when when we do not prioritize what is important to us. Like if you say yes to something, you're saying no to another thing. And
Mm-hmm.
the example I love to use is if I want to reach my peak physical performance, I cannot be going to the bar every night. That is a trade-off. So I choose to prioritize my health and physical performance over having fun and drinking alcohol. That's just a choice that I make. And here I am. I know for a fact that a life based on physical training and health is going to be much better than a life based on drinking alcohol, but I'm not going to sit here and tell other people what to do. I'm just going
Mm-hmm.
to educate you on your choices. And
Yep.
it is a fact that life is trade-offs. So what are we going to choose? And I love that your your journey, or one of the big shifts, was paying attention to your self-talk, because that is something that I've been working on for so long. And what happens to most people usually is we have this rock bottom, we lack confidence, we have no meaning, and we have bad habits. So once we begin to slowly change and pay attention to our inner dialogue, we start to differentiate between the thoughts that serve us and the thoughts that degrade us. And
Mm-hmm.
tell me a little bit about how you've built your mindfulness over time, because just from speaking to you, I can tell you're quite aware of yourself already. But I think mindfulness is so important to the individual. So yeah, just share with me your journey on developing mindfulness.
Man, for one, mindfulness is just like I've always had an eye for the unseen. Like when I'd be looking at something, I would notice the little tiny nuances that people would miss. And the best example for this would be or one of the examples. I played this video game, World of Warcraft, and in the background of the screen, there were these two little guards. They weren't doing anything. It was just a character creation screen. They're just standing there. And I'm like, what are those guards doing back there? And it's like in the far distance of the picture, but my eyes pick up those little distinct details. And I do that with everything in my life because I was always very hyper aware of everything as a threat. Like my anxiety being that high always gave me that, like, well, what am I missing over here that I can't see or there? So once I made that shift to meditating and like doing a cold shower, breath work, anything like that, I started to really pay attention to, the details of that too. And it's like even now when I do exercise, every rep is just, I'm focused on as much sensation as I can. Like, what is this targeting and touching that I'm noticing that people just aimlessly do? Because I see that with a lot of people. They subconsciously just like act throughout the world. They don't think about what is this doing to me that makes me feel not good or good. And so I basically transformed my anxiety into my super mindfulness. And to this day, I still have things that I struggle with, because I'm human, but I am working on just becoming the most aware of things that I can. And then also teaching people about those things helps me remember in the back of my mind, hey, when I'm doing this thing, to slow down and to really be fully in touch with what is happening. You talk a lot about being aware and focus and attention. That's all mindfulness. And like when we take our time to really feel every single, as much experience as we can, honestly, it's like time slows down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in the best possible way. Like now all of a sudden I can experience all the good through life that I can. I'll have a hiccup, like my kids will be doing something annoying because they're not, they're obviously not up to my level of awareness. So I'm like, oh, that's annoying, but you're 3, so I got to kind of like skip over that. And then, I go back throughout my day and I'm like, I'm happy again. But I like to say that 95% of the time I'm happy and I'm not chasing, because like you said, drinking every weekend or whatever, that's like your means to an end. Like all throughout the week, you're working, you're doing your grind, and it's not as fun. But then you get to that weekend, you're like, this is the best part. And that equates to like less than 5% happiness. And that's just the general population. Everybody's not having fun with what they're doing in their lives. And they're chasing that one experience, the party, the drugs, whatever it is that makes them feel that dopamine spike, that super pleasure. And then they just go throughout the week feeling that pain.
Yeah. What I've been reminded of through what you've said is most of our life is the small everyday things. So those actions that we take every day are exactly what our happiness should be derived from, not the thing that you do a third of the time, which is your weekend. We want to create a life where the daily habits bring us high energy and meaning. And that's where it was a bit challenging for me at the very beginning to begin to enjoy new activities. Like I started reading only 10 pages a day. It was like a grind, kind of grueling. But over time, now I read for an hour at a time and I love it. And it's just interesting how we do have to go through these initial stages of building healthy habits before realizing we can actually enjoy the good work, the healthy work that we're doing for ourselves. Even having this conversation right now beginning of creating a podcast had butterflies. I was very nervous. It was more of a job to schedule conversations and to get ready for a conversation. And now I've imprinted in my brain, every time I finish having a conversation, I feel aligned with what I'm supposed to be doing. At the end of the
Mm-hmm.
conversation, my mood, my energy for the rest of the day is through the roof. And that's like a reminder of, okay, not everything that's healthy for you is going to feel good at the very beginning. And in the other spectrum, not everything that's unhealthy for you, like doing cocaine or having sex with a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of girls or
Right.
drinking all the time. Those things feel good in the beginning, but then you have regret and guilt. So it's interesting, that sort of paradox that comes with activities that are healthy and unhealthy.
It's uh it's something that I boiled down really deeply, that it's just the pain pleasure arc. I think I learned this from Andrew Huberman pretty deeply. Dopamine has, you start with the pleasure, you end with the pain of craving, the pain of not having that thing anymore. Like, you want to chase that thing and get that thing again, whether it's nicotine, caffeine, sex, cocaine, whatever. It's all these big spikes of like pleasure, and then
Mm.
boom, you have to, the dynorphin effect, which is the opposite of the dopamine. I think. Don't quote me on all this. It's all what I try to remember, but it's the negative energy or negative chemical in your brain that basically levels you back out to the baseline of where you're at. And every time you spike it up, you increase your baseline for happiness, and that essentially makes everything that's simple and easy not as enjoyable. So when we reverse that and we
Mm.
go for the pain first instead of the pleasure, you're talking working out, cold showers, honestly reading, because it's fighting the addiction to have a busy mind. We're always so, this is Eckhart Tolle saying, we're addicted to thinking, and we have this feeling in our head that if we stop thinking, we stop pursuit of what we're after. So like, if we just sit there and read or meditate, anything that requires silence, then all of a sudden we feel at peace. Silence, peace, God, whatever. you know that so I think people don't realize that they're addicted to noise and the pursuit, because that's the human society grind. Is you got to get to the thing before you can't do the thing anymore. And it's so instead of chasing pleasure, we chase pain. And then we get the backswing of pleasure, and that's the goal, right? Is to feel good in the future and not feel good the now. Like, honestly, if we can enjoy the process, like when I get in a cold shower, I don't like it for 5 seconds and it's not fun. Then the rest of the 2, 3 minutes, I'm like, this feels good. Actually, it doesn't even hurt. And I know for a fact it's going to pay off in better health, better weight loss. I just read that it puts you into ketosis, which is a big deal for losing weight and fighting cancer. No surprise. Um, but there's so many nuanced things to these activities that cause pain in the beginning, and then they have these big payoffs that you don't learn in school. You don't learn from your parents. You learn from finding it online.
Yeah, that ending point is powerful. I want to be a part of the transformation that
Mm-hmm.
that makes this part of the school curriculum, because understanding how your dopamine systems work and the physiology, it is half the battle. Like
Mm-hmm.
a simple example of getting your circadian rhythm going. When we go outside and get sunlight early in the day, people will be miserable because they're overweight, but you don't realize that your metabolism has an internal clock, and that internal clock starts when sunlight goes into your eyes in the morning. But no
Mm-hmm.
one taught me this. I had to hear it from Andrew Huberman on the podcast. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, we need to make a change so that the school systems focus more on physiology and psychology at a younger age, because if we were taught this in high schools, it would make the average individual so much more successful. It would make our world so much better, because when you have individuals who are healthy, you're thinking higher quality thoughts, you're participating in actions that give you higher quality thoughts, and it's a feedback loop. Same thing with the negative. When we're doing good things, we get more. It's the snowball effect. It works both ways. And earlier, I want to go back to this. The definition kind of anxiety, how I like to describe it, is when we're thinking about some sort of future or past. And by developing mindfulness through activities like the cold showers, the meditation, the reading, and the training, where you're focusing on that individual muscle, you're really
Mm-hmm.
harnessing your attention. You're not thinking about what that girl said to you yesterday. You're focusing
Mm-hmm.
on that muscle. When we develop this mindfulness, by definition, we cannot be anxious, because how can you be anxious if you're completely harnessing your attention on the current moment? If anxiety is thinking of a future or past delusion. So it's just powerful when you kind of wrap the whole activity into this organized, what would be the word, into an organized
Harmony.
understanding, where you can kind of see, oh, this translates into this, and it all tightly intertwines.
Yep. It's it's like an orchestra. You're if you're playing something that's disharmonic or out of harmony, whatever, you you will you will get negative results. And there are no warning labels on alcohol, on nicotine. Nicotine tells you it'll cause you cancer. Okay, great. I understand that. Honestly, there is something about smoking that I thought of that actually reduces cancer, and this is not scientific at all. I was just doing my breath work earlier, and I was thinking, why does doing a breath retention, an exhaled breath retention as per Wim Hof method, why does that help reduce inflammation? And brain makes all these connections, and I'm like, we stop feeding the flame. When you're not breathing for a minute and a half, that's a minute and a half I'm in here snuffing out whatever inflammation flame is going on throughout my body. So I'm not giving it that. And so how I relate that to smoking, um, smoke is not pure oxygen. There's some kind of smothering effect to it, and the carcinogens obviously bad, and smoking terrible. This is more just related to the fact that whenever you're making those deep breaths, the sucking in and then you're blowing out, whatever, you're kind of reducing the oxygen intake. So the better way is doing this Wim Hof method breath work. Your breath retention for a minute and a half. You're snuffing out the flames that's causing that the inflammation in your body. I know it's I don't know, it just seems obvious, or maybe that's just my perception of it, but I don't know. Does that make any sense?
It's interesting. I haven't done Wim Hof breathing, but the idea of what you've just mentioned made me think of, if we're focusing on the good things in life, it's hard to focus on the bad things, because you're kind of implying, when we're breathing out for that long breath, there's less coming in, there's less tension inside your body. The inflammation is being expressed and coming outward. We're releasing energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I relate that to, we only have so much attention. And if we're we're doing the right things each day, it's much easier to forget about the negative things.
Absolutely. The book Breath by James Nestor taught me a lot about uh, uh, lengthened exhales, like that they do in mantras. I can't remember if it's Buddhists or just monks in general. When they do the Om meditation, or even when you're doing prayer, there's you do a 6 second inhale and a 6 second exhale. So essentially, you're breathing. What is that? 10 times? No, I'm sorry, 5 times a minute. Whereas the normal person breathes about 12 times a minute. So, like you said, when you're breathing in more, you've got more oxygen to fuel that flame. And whenever we're hyper anxious, like we're not mindful of the fact that we're breathing in more of that negativity and not exhaling at all. So, the one of the practices, other breath works that I kind of did on my own was just start to take a few good breaths, and then you just let out a breath. It takes like 20 seconds. People don't mindfully do that, but when you're breathing out 20 seconds, you're breathing in 10 seconds. Now you're breathing 2 times a minute, and you've got all that energy going out of you, and you're obviously focused on your breath, so all these other thoughts can't intrude. You're right in the present moment.
It helps me during even podcast. I know you mentioned trading the market, and I do actively trade the market, but it's such a stressful act that I catch myself using breath work during the trading session. I'm just like, it is such a universal tool for calming your mind and harnessing your attention. Before this episode, I did a 10-minute meditation just to, it's mind blowing how small actions can change your mood and change how you feel in your energy levels. It it's just so hard to understand until you participate in the actions and get the personal experience that these short activities like a 10-minute journaling session, a 10-minute meditation session can actually impact your day and release stress. And I'm so focused on methods to reduce stress because the less stress we have, the higher quality our thought process will be. And when you're thinking clearly, you're going to be able to execute much easier compared to a scatterbrain. It's significantly harder to execute when things are unclear. So I'd like to hear a little bit about how you remain clear in your life and what methods or what do you do to stay organized? Because I think being organized and having a clear mind has to be one of the most important things for anyone, but especially people who are on this solo or entrepreneurial route.
Honestly, as far as organized goes, I feel super disorganized. And this is just because I've got several different projects going. I only started my Twitter journey like 70 days ago, about 2.5 months. And, prior to that, I was a stay-at-home dad. Prior to that, I was a manufacturing worker. So I have almost no experience in coaching people in their mindset. I only did myself, and now I've got the curse of knowledge. I've got to go back and be like, so what actually worked for me, and how can I apply that to someone? So I feel super disorganized in the fact that learning, I'm taking different courses to grow my knowledge of how to market and sell to people, and how to actually coach people, uh, writing an ebook. I I don't know if it's disorganization or more just my scope of knowledge when it comes to having all this stuff planned in my day, because I've still had the same 16 hours awake as I did a year ago. but now I've got projects and passions to choose, all that stuff. But the best thing I did for my organization was start using Notion and writing down everything I could, recording everything I could. And the one thing that I need to do is just have a reflection, like a weekly reflection of what I did good, what I did bad, what I can do to make things better going forward. There's sorting bookmarks or boiling down my notes, keeping up content on Twitter. There's a lot. There's a lot to it. And I think what I do to keep myself from being overwhelmed from it is just to stick with the moment, stay in the present. It's stay in the present. It's all about power of now, being present in the moment, because I can worry about how I don't have all this stuff organized well enough or optimized, but I know the work I'm doing is putting me ahead of me 6 months ago, me a month ago. I'm always trying to optimize and get better. And it is paying off by just staying in the moment. If I don't get something done quickly enough, I know I'll have time to do it tomorrow, in a week, and I just try and set that focus in the morning, set those intentions. And, having 2 kids and a wife, it's like, and a job, I know that I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage compared to people on Twitter who are in their 20s, who don't have any significant others or kids. But I also know that it's all worthwhile, for me and for my kids and my wife, honestly. Like, a lot of this stuff, it trickles down into those parts of my life. And it's very, very helpful to getting everything drawn forward. I don't know how else to explain that.
You reminded me of, it's so easy for us to compare to other people. And I'm proud of you, like, being where you were last year and being where you are now. Like, sure, the truth is there's always going to be someone with a better hand, a better deck. But if you're doing your best with the situation that you have right now, that's all we can do. And everything I say is a reminder for myself as well, because listen, from someone with those characteristics, I'm 23, no kids, no debt, live with my mom, no big expenses. I have an upper hand, but guess what? There's still people younger than me who I can be jealous of, people younger than me who are way more successful. So it's like, there's always going to be someone who we compare ourselves to who has a better situation. But it's like that idea of, does being jealous of someone hurt them or does it hurt you? It hurts us. So there's no point of being jealous of another individual unless you're going to use that as a inspiration for you to take action and execute. See, we can always reframe situations to serve us. We can use anger and negative emotions to serve us to take action. But my point is, I am impressed with what you've done, and it's just this reminder for the both of us compared to us yesterday. And when we compare to yesterday's us, it's from Jordan Peterson, that idea, it makes everything better. And so you mentioned we all have those same 16 hours that we're awake. And a big idea that I speak about often is, so what differentiates the person who is homeless and addicted to heroin to the person who has the Lamborghini, who's ripped, rare, and rich? Well, the difference, it's something that happens within the 24 hours. Because if we all have the same amount of time, what is going on with those drastically different results. And I think a lot of it comes down to what we've spoken about today, these smaller acts, being mindful and doing the physical activities that raise your energy levels. With raised energy levels, we have increased probabilities of thinking good. So I I love that you talked about using Notion and having the plans and ideas written down, whether it's on the internet or on paper. But I'm curious about, what are some of the other tools that you have used in your life? We can talk very in general, just tools, actions, principles that have really been important to you leveling up.
Okay. Well, I'm I gotta look up a thread that I wrote because I don't have all this stuff in my head very well. But one of them is habits. Honestly, it's having those things to fall back on that you can do that will keep you moving forward instead of backwards, like the heroin addict that you explained. And having specific habits give us an edge over people who have worse habits. So, uh, as far as digital tools, it would be Notion, like I mentioned, having a newsletter, through Beehive, having that long form content to really express like this a deeper level of my understanding. So now I can articulate it better for someone to tell someone else. Because when I was reading last year, I didn't have that. I just knew in my head, like, now I know how to decipher this and how to trickle it down.
Let's break that down a little bit, because the power of long form writing is so important. Give me a little bit of the benefits that you've noticed that come specifically from writing and expressing your thoughts.
Well, it comes what how it benefits me is that, one of when I was writing blogs earlier this year, one of them, which, as we're talking about rest and work, one of the threads or one of the blogs was called Time Under Tension. And it just made me have to break down those three words, that little phrase, time under tension, into a big, thorough explanation so that whatever process is going on in my head is on paper and I can read it, someone else can read it, and they can say, oh, that's how you do that. And to give you just a quick example of what that even means, it's when we're applying pressure or heat to our lives through means of experience, we are heating up the our thoughts, we're priming ourselves for this becoming the new norm. Well, if we keep applying heat, we're eventually going to burn out, and that has a whole lot of negative effects. That's why the 8 hours of sleep is good. You're getting your sun, you're meditating, all that non-sleep deep rest kind of stuff, whatever. So the cooling process is also equally important. Whenever we've digested a lot, now we need to, or when we've consumed a lot, now we need to digest a lot. Rest and digest and fight or flight. And that's left side, right side brain, right side, left side breathing through your nose. And that's not something you do, you can just control. But, whenever some yoga technique I learned, you breathe on your nose, on your finger, you feel it on your left side, you're in rest and digest. And that's a state that most people don't get to go in because they're always worrying about the next thing. It's you mentioned earlier how when we're fully anxious, you can't think. And that's because, we're in the bottom brain thinking. We're in the anxious fight or flight, like, I need to solve this situation, get out of this survival mode thinking, not the prefrontal cortex, analytical, what can I really make deep about this subject? So, coming back to the original question, what does long form writing do? it makes you just focus. You got to really dive deep down into that topic, and then little thoughts just start entering your head about, okay, well, this relates to that. And then you're making connections with something you heard a year ago. It's almost like the movie Limitless, which is just so fun to think to myself, or anybody who's doing this at, just making these connections nobody else would normally make.
Yeah, I love everything that you just spoke about, and the yin and yang, the rest and digest, the balance that we have to understand is I was listening to a video this morning from Leo from actualize.org, and he's
Mm-hmm.
speaking about the exquisite balance of the universe, like how fast the how fast, but perfectly the hummingbird's wings have to flutter for it to stay on that perfect hovering mode to precisely get the nectar out of the flower. It's like it has to be so perfect. And I say often, I hear often, we are perfectly imperfect. But then at the same time, it's beautiful. Think about like all of our organs that are operating inside of our body that we are not doing anything to. There's some sort of next level intelligence that had to be so wise for all of these unseen aspects or maybe overlooked aspects. So the rest and digest, I love that, because when we have that full mind, let's say we listened to podcasts, we read books, we consumed, let's say it's good information, we're eating clean and we're consuming great information, we still need to take some time to declutter, to decompress. And I have on my whiteboard behind me, I got this from Dan Coe, and it's like the optimal way to go throughout your day. Let's see if I can remember. The morning is for output, for focus, and for creation. That's when I write the best, is when I'm in the morning and I'm able to focus my attention the most. Then in the afternoon, we should be reading and socializing. And what's the third one? Reading, socializing, and learning. So, and I'm not going to say you can't learn in the morning. Like learning is good, but this is just the optimal way for you to do your activities. And then at nighttime, it's what we are talking about, doing the meditation, the journaling, decluttering the mind. So in the morning, it's like we're focusing. In the afternoon, we're consuming. And then at the nighttime, we're decluttering. And I think that's beautiful how there's phases to our days. We can't just be writing all day and not consuming anything. We won't have anything to write about. And we can't
Right.
just be reading all day and not writing about what we've read.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely. And as a he's super effective. Like when I hear Dan Coe, I'm just like, yeah, okay, so that God, like that guy who's on another level, you know, I aspire to be like that.
Me
Going back to
too.
your thing about comparison, whenever we look at people who are ahead of us or that we like features of, it's nice to, instead of comparing, it's to say I want to aspire to be that person, and that's what every
Yeah.
they aspire to be like their idols, and so on and so on. And the more the internet evolves, the more we got all these things that we can compare ourselves to. And so when it comes to good comparison, always look for people you aspire to. And then when you want to do bad comparison, which is comparing the worst part of your life, you think about someone who's got it even worse, and you say, "Well, I'm glad it's not that bad," you know, um, or that I'm glad I'm ahead of that person, and you see in the 4 agreements. Sorry, I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here. In the
I
four
like
agreements,
tangents. I like them.
they're fun. It's that those connections all firing off. In the 4 agreements, they talk about in the very beginning, the opening credits, of how he saw himself and other people, and nobody else could see themselves in him. And I I feel that, I just read that book recently, or I just audibled it very recently, and I had already been very strong with my mindset. But those 4 rules are super easy, clean cut, able to follow. But anyways, so seeing when I see someone struggling with their anger or anxiety, I'm like, okay, I've been there and I know how that feels. I can't just tell you that and all of a sudden you feel better, but I've seen myself, I see that version of me from the past.
Mm,
And
mm,
I'm glad I'm not on that part. But if you're trying to ascend or gain awareness of how you can be out of that state, that's basically what I'm here to do. I'm here to bring your level of awareness up to, and don't
mm.
live like that. Like, you can live the same way you're living, you can have the same things, the same job, the kids, whatever, and all of a sudden have a better mindset about it. Like, this is all, you're right where you're supposed to be. You are
Mhm.
right where you're supposed to be always. You can wish and compare in a way that you could never have, but it doesn't serve you. Like you mentioned earlier, do something that serves you, what you can control. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is the bottom line differentiation between what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing. Does it serve us? And it's in every single domain of life. But with the healthy comparison, I used to be that person because just a quick
Yeah.
background. In high school, I was athletic. I was never overweight. I always considered myself above average. And
Mhm.
I used that as an excuse not to be the best I could be. I was above average and I was fine being better than most people. But then over time, I've realized now I look at people who are below me in a completely different way. I used to judge them. I used to think I'm better than them. Now I look at these people and I do what you were speaking of. Like I know how that person feels. The best thing I can do is send them a quick prayer and send them positive energy to literally, sometimes it's more powerful not to say something to someone, but to just think a thought quick. Like they will lose that weight. I believe in them and they
Mhm.
will get their life in order. It's like, I don't know. I like to mix the mind, the body, and the spirit. That's my foundation of everything I speak about. And that spiritual side of just sending people good energy. And it's, I like what you said about the world is as you are. It's when you have done a level, when you have done significant inner work, you can immediately see who else has done that work by the way that they carry themselves, by what they pay attention to, and by the quality of their actions. Like someone who has done significant inner work, you will never find that person in a comment section arguing with another person because that's just not an activity that serves us.
Right. It's absolutely true. Um, oh man, I'm trying to think of something here. The you said the comparison, the quick prayer you say for people. I've as I'm trying to become a coach and helping people with this, I'm thinking, it's very easy to help people who do believe in what you believe in, because, or they have some. It's the 5 levels of awareness that I don't have off the top of my head. Non-aware, it's like aware that they could be aware or whatever. It's easiest to help those kind of people. So what can we do? This is a question that's just plagued my mind forever. I'm like, how
Mm,
can I help people who don't want help? Because that is the the thing that keeps me up at night. So it's asking questions. There it is. That's the secret. Asking the right question, because every question that these people never hear, they never hear it. They never hear, what could you do to fix, what could you do to get to that point you want to be in your life? Because there's A and B. It's you're here and you want to be there. You wish you were here. What can you do to be there? So I have to ask, when I ask that question, all of a sudden that triggers in their mind a thought. What could I do? What one thing could I do today that I would do, that I could do? Some Jordan Peterson stuff right there. The smallest little baby step that you could take. They're not thinking that in the day. They're thinking, I've got to get to the next step of my current existence, because my says, in order to keep living this life, I've got to keep moving along, and I have no time to sit over here and meditate for 10 minutes. So when you ask that question, something simple like that, now all of a sudden they've got to change, they've got to shift gears. They're going at full speed 5. Now they got to, I'm switching into reverse. What could I do to, make a little progress on that today? Or in a week or in a month. And so when you start getting those questions going, now all of a sudden you're getting that prefrontal cortex working, and they've got to come up with solutions. People don't get asked questions enough. That is the secret.
Yeah. Questions have to be the route to bettering yourself. And I have learned the quality of your questions matters. So if I say, why don't I look good today? That's a shit question. Or I could ask myself, what do I need to do to make myself look better right now? And one question gives you a shit answer. The other gives you an actionable solution. And that's what I've realized with the coaching as well. People do not want to be told what to do. So, it's that cliche. You cannot force the horse to drink. You can bring him to the river. And I tussle with that same question so much. How do we help those who don't want help? Part of me says you cannot help those who don't want help. And then there is this potential that you give them space, you give them a little bit of time, then you just gently throw friendly but deep questions at them. And you don't need an answer from them, but you just make them ponder on that question, at least throw it at them. I think that's like the first step, because it's very hard to want other people to get to the point where you're at. Like me and you, we have clearly gone from being in a bad spot, a negative state of mind, to having cultivated a peaceful state of being through inner work. And I wish that for everyone, but most people have no interest in doing the inner work. And that's where I'm at. Like, I would love to take my energy and ask all of my friends good questions. But the truth is, creating great and deep questions takes a lot out of us. It's not just some easy act. So we have to be very specific about who we choose to bring up with us and who we choose to ask those questions.
I do that all the time, man. It's subconscious to me at this point to pick my battles, because there are people who, like you say, they want to keep living their life as strongly as possible. But then you see that the one person who wants to be happy, they want to be happier, and they don't know what it would take to even do that. So you said asking there's a should answer and a good answer. That's the difference between a why question and a what question. When you ask why something, they have to give you their perspective on why they think that way. It's not, what could you do to do it differently? Because that takes thought. That takes some kind of creation in their head. That's there. It's It's always been there. You just never had to make that connection because you're living your existence through your perspective. Like, this is how it has to be. And every why to it is already loaded up. Why do you do that? Because I have to. Okay, great answer. What reason, or what do you do that for? And it kind of explains, well, I have to do it because of this or whatever. And then it's, what could you do different? Or what thing about it is necessary? Like, if you don't do that, what's going to happen? Another great one. Like, if you didn't, if I didn't meditate this morning, what's going to happen? Well, I wouldn't have reduced my inflammation. I wouldn't have had that quiet time in my head. So many things, and
You're more stressed. You'll be more stressed for sure. I you said something so good. I had a great thought. I'm trying to recall it.
It'll come back.
Yeah, we did very good with, I've been working on this. Like, where it all came from is Jordan Peterson, but I aspire to be able to go on tangents like he does, because he takes an idea and he branches so far off and somehow reroutes it back. I will get like that eventually. I've been building that capacity. I'm not at a great level yet, but isn't it mind-blowing to have the luxury to learn from these next level intellectuals like Dan Coe and Jordan Peterson? Like, those men are on different levels. And I know that me and you, we are on a different level compared to the average individual. So as long as we continue to do what we've talked about today, paying attention to what's working, what's not working, and doing the daily actions, the habits, I'm sure that our capacity will continue to increase. And what did I tweet like 2 days ago? Something about how you don't even realize how much progress you've made until you look back and realize everything has completely changed. And I think we'll wrap up, but is there anything that you would like to leave with the listeners? Any strong thoughts? I'll give you a second after this to share your Twitter, but yeah, just any closing ideas or thoughts that you would like to leave off with.
Oh, to sum it all up, the way we think determines how we live. You can either live through your subconscious, through your pain body, Eckhart Tolle goes, or you can live consciously and thinking, what can I do better today? What little thing can I do better? Habits are everything. They are yourself. And if you retain bad habits that don't serve you, you will end up in a place you don't want to be. And consciously, you want to be in a good place, but subconsciously, your brain is going to direct you exactly where you want to go because it knows what it's doing. But if you lead it off course, you're gonna end up in a bad place without even realizing that you got there.
Yeah, you reminded me of that term, like the fish in the water. That's what I was. I had these bad habits. I didn't know what I didn't know. And that's an interesting concept. It's who knows why we reach rock bottom when we reach that, but it's one of two things. It's usually rock bottom or a drastic life-changing event that sparks us making shifts. So to the audience, if you know that your life could be better, if internally you've been hung up on this idea that you're unsatisfied, you're unhappy, and deep within it is obvious that you could be living a better life, this is your sign today to just make one change, a small shift, something that you'll be able to repeat over time sustainably. Start small. I'll throw a few at you right now, a few potential assignments. Read 10 pages a day, meditate for 5 minutes, do one workout a day. If you're terribly overweight, it could be a walk. Whatever makes your heart go, whatever is intense for you. But you have to start somewhere. You have to start now. Thank you so much, man. I had a blast speaking with you. Where should we send the audience if they want to learn more about what you do?
It's at Right Confidence on Twitter. It's WRITE Confidence. That's where I post daily. I have a newsletter link in that bio, and my DMs are always open to anybody who wants to learn more about mindset, confidence in general.
Thank you, man. So much fun.
I had a blast, Justin. Thank you.
I'm wishing you a great day. I'll be in touch.
Sounds good.
See you, man.
Later.